For Black History Month, we are celebrating trailblazers who became leaders in their field and helped change the course of history. This morning, we hear from two civil rights attorneys. Fred Gray was the lawyer for Rosa Parks during the Montgomery Bus Boycott in 1955, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. An Alabama native, Gray is now 89 years old. Benjamin Crump is a renowned attorney known for representing the families of the slain teenagers Trayvon Martin in Florida and Michael Brown in Missouri. Crump, who is 50 years old, practices law in 5 states and Washington, D.C. Gray has mentored Crump for more than 20 years. We brought them together at the Tuskegee History Center in Alabama to talk about their life's work and paving the way for countless others in the modern civil rights movement.
Well, when I was growing up in Montgomery in the 30s, 40s, 50s, there were basically only 2 professions that African-American boys could really look at as being professions that people thought a lot about. But we did have teachers and preachers. And I kind of decided that I would probably try to be both. My father died when I was 2. My mother was a domestic worker, only went to the 5th grade. But she told the 5 of us as we grew up in the west side of Montgomery that we could be anything we wanted to be if we did 3 things. 1, keep Christ first in your life. 2, stay in school and get a good education. And 3, stay out of trouble. I tried to do all. In 1947, I enrolled in Alabama State College for Negroes in Montgomery, living on the west side of town. And the school was on the east side of town, so I used the buses all the time for that purpose. By using the buses, I observed that our people were mistreated. We were frequently asked to get up and give our seats to white persons. And I observed that everything was completely segregated. And we had a family friend named E.D. Nixon, who was very interested in civil rights and had been president of the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP. He encouraged me to become a lawyer. I made a personal secret commitment in my upper teenage that I was going to finish law school, come back to Alabama, take the bar exam, become a lawyer, and destroy everything segregated I could find.
I wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was in the 4th grade. Much like my mentor Fred Gray's story, it's certain things that trigger you to say you want to go be a champion for justice and an opponent to enemies of equality. And for me, that was when I was in the 4th grade growing up in Lumberton, North Carolina. All deliberate speed from the Supreme Court decision in Brown didn't get to Lumberton until around the late 70s. And so in 1979, I was in the 4th grade. And that's when they bused the black children from South Lumberton across the tracks to the school in the white community that was a newer school with newer books and newer technology. And all the black children got free lunch. And it would be a long line of us waiting. And the little white children, they could go get the a la carte lunches and they could get cheeseburgers and pizza and French fries, everything that little children want. And I kept thinking to myself, man, why is it that some people in certain parts of the community have it so good and others seem to have it so challenging in my community? And I remember my mother told me it was because of Brown versus the Board of Education and Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP lawyers, why we got to go to the school with the new books and the new technology and new equipment. And I said to myself, I'm gonna be like Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP lawyers when I grow up, because I want to make it better for people in my community and people who look like me. And from that day until this one, that's what I've been striving to do. So I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer and fight for the least of these, as my grandmother say, the people who need a voice, the people who are often marginalized, disenfranchised, and dehumanized. We are amazed, I am, at your recall. I mean, I pray, Fred, when I get to be 89 years old, that I can recall dates and facts like you're doing now. I mean.
Well, I didn't have the privilege of going to any integrated anything.
Yes, sir.
And my whole idea was to destroy segregation. I started going to the NAACP meetings, and I met Rosa Parks. We would sit and share our lunches and talk about the problems. So on December 1st, it was like any other day that we had talked. We had our lunch, came back late in the evening, and I had phone calls from a whole lot of people. And I found out that Ms. Parks had been arrested. I went over, she told me she wanted me to represent her, and I told her I would. But I also told her, I said, well, Ms. Parks, you know, we've been dealing with this problem on the buses for a long time now. But you know, there has been talk in the community about people staying off of the buses as a protest. And if we're going to do that, now is the time. To make a long story short, went across town to Joanne Robinson's house, and we sat in her living room on the evening of December 1st and the morning of December 2nd and made the plans for the Montgomery Bus Boycott. But then we said that we need to have the preachers involved in it.
Amen.
A majority of the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, have refrained from riding city buses since December 5th.
That's how Dr. King was introduced. And then officially, Dr. King was made and appointed the spokesman for the group, and the rest of it is history.
Outrage over the fatal shooting of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin.
Protesters are demanding the arrest of that neighborhood watch captain.
I think a lot went into the background of people knowing about Trayvon Martin and this kid who was walking home minding his business when this neighborhood watch volunteer with a 9mm gun profile pursued and shot him in the heart. 2 days later, his father called. I cannot articulate the sound that was coming from his voice, this sound of heartbrokenness. He said, my son, Trayvon Martin, was walking home from the 7-Eleven, and the neighborhood watch volunteer shot and killed him. There are two battles. It's the battle in the court of law and the battle in the court of public opinion.
No justice, no peace.
And I understood that the only way we were going to win this battle in the court of public opinion was going to be with the young people and the young energy and those young people who will become Black Lives Matter. It was the young people on social media who got Trayvon Martin to mainstream media. And it was a lesson now that has been duplicated dozens and dozens of times since then.
Frequently people will say, well, Fred Gray, they say you did so much in the civil rights movement. I never did see you out there marching. I said, that's correct. I only marched for ceremonial reasons. My role was not to march. My role was to get the law and have the law protect the individuals so they could march.
We are not afraid.
The Civil Rights March consisted of people doing a lot of things. Some made speeches, some marched, some did legal work. But it took all of it, but it was because we worked together and was able to do it. But the struggle continues.
I always marveled at what Dr. King said when he said we all have a role to play in the struggle.